Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are you guys? Hope you are still fine and still healthy in this pandemic. So today we are from the 11th group who will explain more and briefly about racial and ethnicity that happens in some countries such as USA, Australia, and United Kingdom. So let's begin. Okay, before we start to uh, the other countries, so let we have to know more about what is the meaning of race actually. Race refers to a category of people who share certain inherited physical characteristics such as skin color, facial features, and stature. Most people think of race in biological terms, and for more than 300 years, or ever since white Europeans began colonizing nations filled with people of color, people have been identified as belonging to one race or another based on certain biological features. So, in this part, we can underline that people are divided by their race. Their race identify them as from the skin color, facial features, and stature. Okay, let's come to the next. It's about ethnicity. So, what is the meaning of ethnicity? Ethnicity refers to the shared social, cultural, and historical experiences stemming from common national or regional backgrounds that make subgroups of a population different from one another. Ethnic group also is a subgroup of a population with a set of shared social, cultural, and historical experiences, with relatively distinctive beliefs, values, and behaviors, and with some sense of identity of belonging to the subgroup. So, in this part, we can underline that ethnicity is a group of people that have their own beliefs, values, and behaviors, and also they also have their own culture. So, for example of ethnicity, which is very clear in front of us is Javanese. It is one of ethnicity in Indonesia. So the next will be continued by my friend to explain about the ethnicity in some countries.
Next, racial and ethnicity in USA. Racial in USA. According to the 2000 census, officially recognized 6 racial categories in USA. First, white. European immigrants came from Germany and Ireland starting in the 1820s. And the next, the Irish immigrants of the same time period were not always as well off financially, especially after the Irish potato famine of 1845. German and Irish immigration continued into the late 19th century and early 20th century. Eastern European immigrants, people from Russia, Poland, Bulgaria, and Austria-Hungary started arriving around the same time. Many of these Eastern Europeans were peasants forced into a hard-scrabble existence in their native lands. Political unrest, land shortages, and crop failures drove them to seek better opportunities in the United States. 2. American Indian and Alaska Native peoples of North and South America. The earliest immigrants to America arrived millennia before European immigrants. Dates of the migration are debated, with estimates ranging from between 45,000 and 12,000 BC. It is thought that the early Indians migrated to this new land because in search of large game to hunt were large herds of herbivores grazing in America. Over the centuries and then thousands of years, Native American culture developed into hundreds or interconnected tribes, each with its own custom, traditions, language, and religions. 3. Asian. The first Asian immigrants to come to the United States in the mid-19th century were Chinese to find work to support their family. Then, in 1880s, Japanese immigration began. They had a strong government that negotiated with the US government to ensure the well-being of their immigrants. The most recent large-scale Asian immigration came from Korea and Vietnam and largely took place during the second half of the 20th century. Many Asian immigrants came to the United States to seek better economic opportunities. 4. Black or African American. African races first came to America when a Dutch captain brought Africans to the Virginia colony of Jamestown in 1619 and sold them as indentured servants. In 1705, Virginia passed the slave code declaring that any foreign-born non-Christian could be a slave and that slaves were considered property. The next 150 years saw the rise of U.S. slavery, with black Africans being kidnapped from their own lands and shipped to the New World on the transatlantic journey known as the Middle Passage. Once in America, the black population grew until black people born in the US outnumbered those born in Africa. But the colonial and later US slave code stated that the child of a slave was a slave. So the slave class was created. In 1869, the slave trade was carried out internally in the United States, with slaves bought and sold across state borders like cattle. 5. Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander. Migration from Oceania to the United States began in the last decade of 18th century, but the first migrants to arrive in this country were native of Hawaii. The first native Hawaiians to live in the United States were fur traders, people from Hawaii, Guam, Samoa, or other Pacific islands. 6. People of two or more races, widely known as multiracial, those who check off an or write in more than one race. There is no option labeled two or more races or multicultural on census and other forms. People who report more than one of the foregoing 6 options are classified as people of two or more races. In subsequent processing, any respondent may identify with any number, including all 6 of the racial categories. Next, ethnicity in USA. According to the U.S. Office of Management and Budget, or OMB. First, Hispanic or Latino. OMB defines Hispanic or Latino as a person of Cuban, Mexican, Puerto Rican, South or Central American, or other Spanish culture or origin regardless of race. They don't conform to any biological, anthropological, or genetic criteria. 2. Not Hispanic or Latino, people who have a place of origin not from America, such as Africa, Asia, Arab, and other origins.
Okay, so for the next, we come to the part of racial and ethnicity in Australia. We have to know where is Australia. So, Australia is the only country in the world that covers an entire continent. It is one of the largest countries on Earth. Therefore, it also consists of various races and ethnics. So you can take a look at this map the location of Australia. Okay, let's talk about the race in Australia. The Melanozoid is a race that inhabits much of Australia and was also the first to be discovered living there. In general, this race is still categorized as a negrite race. So, we can underline that Melanozoid is a race that find the Australia. They are living there about 1,000 years. So in general, melanocyte is still a part of negrite race. So let's take a look at the characteristic of melanocyte. There are 5 characteristics there. The first is having black skin, second black and curly hair, the next has thick lips, next upright posture, and the last the nose is white and flat. So it's it's more similar with Indonesian people, especially from the east, uh, like Papua. Okay, you can take a look at the picture here. Here are the example of the picture of melanocyte people, or we can know that they are a part of Aborigines who discovered Australia first. We can see that they have curly hair, black skin, and also the white and flat nose. Basically, Australia is inhabited by the Melanesian race, which will begin to be marginalized as the Caucasian race arrives from Europe. However, the development of the Melanocyte race population level will also decrease over time, even though the level of racism that occurs in Australia is not high. But still racism that is carried out still occurs. So, in this explanation, we can take that the Melanesian race is colonized by Caucasian race from Europe, or we know that as the white people who arrived in Australia and take all the Australia and make the Melanesian are ruled out. So after the invasion of white-skinned people, the Melanesian have to move to another far from Australia, but it is still from Australia, as we know that it is in Torres Island. Okay, the next it is about ethnicity in Australia. Basically, The indigenous people in Australia are well known as an Aborigine ethnic, even there are many theories that imply the Aborigine are not the indigenous people of Australia. The Aboriginal people have lived and maintained Australia's water for nearly 60,000 years using their own systems of government and laws. It is said that they settled on that smallest continent for thousands of years, but then they were displaced by the smarter immigrants, white skin from Europe, as we know as Caucasoid. As I said before, that the Aborigines who discovered the Australia have been lived there about thousands years. They have their own system and their laws, but it is displaced by white-skinned people, as we know as Caucasoid, because they are smarter than Aborigines, and they can rule the Aborigines and make them uh, displacing. So today, the population of Australia consists of more than 270 ethnic groups. You can take a look at this picture that for the purple is white and others not elsewhere classified. So it is immigrants actually, and Asian as blue, and the Aborigine is very small. As we know before that white-skinned people invade the Aborigines and make them and take their place. But actually, race and ethnicity in Australia affect the diversity among people. There are some people who don't admit the existence of indigenous people of Australia are the Aborigines. So they they admit that they discovered the Australia, not the Aborigines. It was only because of they have a different race and think that they have more authority than them. But we can't deny that uh, the invasion of Caucasoid or white-skinned people brought many advantages to Australia also. We can see clearly that Australia now become a part of developed country because of white-skinned people. Uh, as I explained before, that they are more smarter than the Aborigines. Okay, for the next, it will be continued by my friend.
I want to talk about race and ethnicity in the United Kingdom. England is the largest and most populous state of the states that make up the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Your location from the United Kingdom. 1. We will talk about race in the UK. What is the Caucasoid? Caucasoid is a race thought to have originated from the Caucasus Mountains in Europe. The Caucasoid broke down the nations of Europe. This race has characteristic white skin, blonde hair, sharp nose, blue eyes, long chin, and body height between 180 until 210 centimeters. Then this race spread to various regions on Earth so that it reached the continents of West Asia, Asia, and Africa, especially West Asia, Central Asia, and North Africa, which consisted of white people including the Caucasoid race, Nordic, Mediterranean, Alpine, and Indic. There are races in the United Kingdom. The first is Nordic Caucasoid, second is Mediterranean Caucasoid, third is Alpine Caucasoid, and the last is Indic Caucasoid. First, Nordic Caucasoid. There are characteristics are tall body size, golden hair, blue eyes, oval or oval face shape. This race is found in the northern European region around the Baltic Sea. Second, second is Mediterranean Caucasoid. Their characteristics are shorter body size than the Nordic, brown to black hair, brown eyes, round face shape. These races are found around the Mediterranean, North Africa, Armenia, and Saudi Arabia. Third is Alpine Caucasoid. Their body characteristics are between the Nordic and Mediterranean, namely red or chestnut blonde hair, reddish white skin, 180 tall body posture, blue or brown eye beads, oval or oval face shape, sharp nose, and narrow shoulders. They are found in Eastern Europe and Central Europe. And the last is in the Caucasoid. Their characteristics are small body size, yellow and brown skin color, but Caucasoid face shape, black eyes, black hair, oval and round face shape. This race is located in Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and India. Based on the division of the Caucasoid race above, the population of England is largely classified as a Nordic Caucasoid race. However, not all of the British population consists of only the Caucasoid Nordic race, but also many other Caucasoid races, both Mediterranean and Alpine. The average population of England is dominated by the three Caucasoid races, although it doesn't rule of the existence of other races such as the Mongoloid. This is usually due to migration or mixed marriages that give rise to mixed race descent. Next, number 2, we will talk about ethnicity in the UK. Ethnicity in the United Kingdom. The inhabitants of England are Britons who are descended from the Aryan tribe from India. It is said that in the story, some of the nations that inhabited much of mainland Europe until the Middle Ages were barbarian and nomadic tribes. They are descended from the Aryan race and have come to mainland Europe thousands of years ago. After becoming well known throughout mainland Europe and adapting to the circumstances of their environment, the Aryans began to develop their own language and culture. One theory is that the Aryans originally came from India and found their way to Europe. Many of them continued north and settled there as sailors. These people are in the Scandinavian and Baltic Sea regions. They are referred to as Vikings. Besides being good at hunting, these people are reliable and brave sailors. This Aryan nationality is still a less civilized person. They were a group of barbarians who fought and believed in many mystical things. History of ethnicity in the United Kingdom. Historically, the indigenous people of Britain are considered to be descended from the various ethnic groups that had settled there before the 11th century, namely the Celts, Romans, Anglo-Saxons, Norse, and Normans. There is also a theory that the Welsh people are the oldest ethnic group in Great Britain. Genetic studies have recently shown that more than 50% of British genes contain Germanic chromosomes. Yet, another recent genetic analysis has also shown that about 75% of the ancestors of modern British people arrived in the British Isles from 6,200 years ago, namely during the early Neolithic and Stone Age Britain. There are Celts people, Romans people, Norse people, Anglo-Saxon people, and Normans people. It has also been found that the British generally share a common ancestor with the Basques. The United Kingdom has a history of small-scale, non-white immigration. Liverpool is listed as the city with the oldest black population in the country, dating back to the 1730 onwards, and also the oldest Chinese community in Europe, namely since the arrival of Chinese sailors in the 19th century. In 1950, an estimated to 20,000 non-white residents were living in Great Britain, most of whom were of foreign birth or born outside of Great Britain. Since 1945, massive migrations from Africa, the Caribbean, and South Asia have been a legacy of the relationships forged by the British Empire. Migration from the Europe member state to Central and Eastern Europe since 2004 has resulted in the growth of these groups increasingly diverse. However, since 2008, many immigrants have returned to their home countries, so the concrete number of these groups can no longer be known. In 2001, about 92.1% of the UK population identified themselves as white, so only 7.9% of the British population identified themselves as a mixed race or ethnic minority. Diversity and disadvantage. The UK is becoming increasingly ethnically diverse. Over 20% of the population reports as being from a minority ethnic group. While many British ethnic minorities are immigrants, a substantial share, over 40% of Asians and Black ethnic groups are born in the UK. This is also increasingly in the case for their parents and grandparents as well. The experience of the UK's ethnic minorities varies. While those from all minority groups now attend university at higher rates than the white British majority population, there remains substantial variation between groups in their academic attainment. Those of Indian and Chinese ethnicity outperform their white majority counterparts at particularly high rates. According to the 2011 census, the ethnic composition of the United Kingdom was as set out in the table below. White British is an ethnicity classified used in the 2011 United Kingdom census. In the 2011 census, the white British population was 51,736,290%, or 86.1% of the UK total population. What is the recommended ethnic group question for use on a survey in UK? In United Kingdom, there are 18 ethnic groups recommended for use by the government when asking for someone's ethnicity. These are grouped into 5 ethnic groups, each with any other option where people can write in their ethnicity using their own words. The first is white, included English, Welsh, Scottish, Northern Irish, or British. Then Irish, Gypsy or Irish traveler, and any other white background. Second, mixed or multiple ethnic groups included white and black Caribbean, white and black African, white and Asian, and any other mixed and multiple ethnic background. Third, Asian or Asian British included Indian, Pakistani, Bangladesh, Chinese, and any other Asian background. 4. Black, African, Caribbean, or Black British included African, Caribbean, and any other Black, African, or Caribbean background. And the last is other ethnic group included Arab and any other ethnic groups.
Apart having a large area, Indonesia is also rich in cultural, religious, ethnic, and racial diversity. Racial diversity usually identified by physical characteristics. Each race also has a special characteristic that can be seen and identified directly. For example, the race of people in the Papua region is different from those in Java. Actually, Indonesia has 5 races. They are race Malayan Mongoloid, race Melanosoid, race Bedoid, race Caucasoid, and race Negroid. First is race Malayan Mongoloid. Race Malayan Mongoloid divided into two. First is race Malayan Mongoloid. Race Malayan Mongoloid divided into two. There are Proto-Malay and Deutero-Malay. Proto-Malay is a Malay race that has an original culture and come to the archipelago. The Proto-Malay nation is one of the oldest and also the ancestor of the Indonesian nations. For the first time they came to Indonesia in 1500 before century. The physical characteristic of Proto-Malay: brown skin color, round face, slanted eyes, straight hair, height around 150 until 170 centimeters. From the result of the development and descent of the Proto-Malay, it is known as Suku Dayak in Kalimantan, Suku Toraja in South Sulawesi, Suku Bata in North Sumatra, Suku Sasa in Lombok, Suku Nias in North Sumatra, and Gayo in Aceh. And then the race Malayan Mongoloid, Deutero-Malay. Deutero-Malay is a race originating from the southern part of Indochina. Physical characteristic of Deutero-Malay: brown skin color, round face, slanted eyes, straight hair, height around 160 until 175 centimeters. From the result of the development and descent of the Deutero-Malay, it is now known as Suku Bugis, Suku Aceh, Suku Minangkabau, Manado, Suku Jawa, Suku Sunda, Suku Melayu, Suku Betawi, and Suku Bali. Second is Melanozoid. Melanozoid race is a group of people who look black and are scattered in eastern Indonesia. The physical characteristic of Melanozoid: black skin, thick lips, oval face, upright posture, black and curly hair. The nose is wide and flat, height around 160 until 170 centimeters. From the result of the development and descent of the Melanozoid, it is now known as Suku Huli, Suku Muyu, Suku Karawai, Suku Dani, Suku Amukme, and Suku Asmat. Third, race Vedoid. The Vedoid race is a race originating from the southern India. The physical characteristic of Vedoid: brown skin, black wavy hair, the upper lips medium in size, smaller head and face in size. From the result of the development and descent of the Vedoid, it is now known as Suku Tamuna in Pulau Muna, Suku Toala in Semenanjung Sulawesi, Suku Dayo in Danau Toba, Suku Sakai in Siak, Suku Tamuna in Kepulauan Mentawai, Suku Kubu in Jambi. 4. Race Negroid. The Negroid race is a term that was once used to denote the general phenotype of most of the inhabitants of the African continent south of the Sahara Desert. The physical characteristic of Negroid: black skin, square face shape, black curly hair, height around 170 until 180 centimeters. This race comes from Asia, which can be found on the Malay Peninsula and the Andaman Island. The last race is Caucasoid. The Caucasoid race is usually known as the white race, which includes the native of Europa as well as parts of Asia and Africa. The physical characteristic of Caucasoid: white skin, oval face, the eyes are narrow and eyelid, pointed nose, blonde hair, height around 165 until 180 centimeters. The rest are generally Indian, Middle Eastern, Australian, Arab, and American people who come to Indonesia. Secondly, I want to talk about ethnicity in Indonesia. In Indonesia motto, unity in diversity, signifies the country myriad of culture and ethnicity with all its people living together largely in peace. Many Indonesians will first identify themselves from their ethnic groups when strangers ask where they are from. The question emphasizes how important it is for Indonesians to claim their ethnic groups. The answer can provide an identification of how to interact with them. Ethnic groups in Indonesia are classified into two categories. There are ethnic pribumi Nusantara or native Indonesian ancestry, and ethnic immigrant or other nation who live and settle in Indonesia. First, ethnic pribumi Nusantara. Pribumi Nusantara is a term that refers to a group of people in Indonesia who come from sharing the same socio-cultural heritage and style as the original inhabitants of Indonesia. 90% from 300 ethnic groups in Indonesia are of native Indonesian ancestry. The ethnic groups in Indonesia in order of size are as follows: Javanese, which make up nearly 42% of the total populations, Sundanese 31%, Malay 3.7%, Maduranese 3.3%, and others 26%. Mostly ethnic Indonesia can be identified by how the race or physically characteristic of people. The skin color of indigenous Indonesia range from yellow to light brown to dark brown or black skin color. Archaeologist Peter Bellwood states that most of the people in Indonesia, an area he calls the Mongoloid clinical zone, are southern Mongoloid but have a high grade of Australoids. For the example of ethnic pribumi Nusantara or native Indonesian ancestry. First, Javanese ethnic. The Javanese ethnic is the largest ethnic in Indonesia. This ethnic is known for its manner, gentle and polite. These community groups are mainly spread over Central Java, Yogyakarta, East Java, Indramayu in West Java, Serang and Cilegon in Banten. Second, Sundanese tribe. The Sundanese is the second largest ethnic in Indonesia. These ethnic are known to be optimistic, friendly, cheerful, and unpretentious. These community groups are mainly spread over East Java, Banten, Jakarta, Banyumasan in Central Java. Third is Batak tribe. The Batak tribe is the 10th largest ethnic in Indonesia. These ethnic are a group of tribes who inhabit most of Batak is only in the Toba tribe, whereas Batak is not only the Toba tribe. Besides that, there are many more examples from the indigenous ethnic groups of the archipelago. Then, ethnic immigrant. A small number of Indians, Arabs, and Chinese have come and inhabited several places in the archipelago since time immemorial during the ancient kingdom era. However, the wave of immigrations grew rapidly during the colonial period. A group of ethnic immigrants who mainly live in urban areas was formed during the colonial periods of the Dutch East Indies, namely classified into the foreign age group, such as Chinese, Arabic, and Indian descent, as well as the Indo or Eurasian group, namely a mixture of Indonesian and Arab. For the example of ethnic immigrant, first is Chinese. The most significant foreign ethnic minority in Indonesia is Chinese. The Chinese have inhabited in Indonesia since 15th century with the road of commercial activities, which then had a major influence on trade and economic activities in Indonesia. Second is Arab. Historically, the arrival of Arabs in Indonesia to spread Islam. However, some cities in Indonesia have significant Arab population that preserve their culture and identity, which are called Kampung Arab. And there are many more examples of ethnic immigrants in Indonesia, such as India, Indo, Pakistani, Japan, Korea, and etc.